Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Roebeck, and I'm a mindset coach and speaker. And I'm about to be featured on the online prosperity show with Prosper Taruvinga. And you can really look forward to some really insightful ideas on how to control your mind and get the results that you want.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and dare I say, today we've got a transformative episode for you today. Now, I have the honor of introducing Lee Roebeck, a man who went from a stable yet unfulfilling corporate career to now becoming a celebrated mindset coach and speaker. Now, Lee, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Prosper, for the introduction. I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Even really excited the fact that you're from down south, and we would have grown up maybe high-fiving each other, looking at the proximity of the map. But it's quite exciting when I get to speak to people from South Africa, and even though you are internationally acclaimed, it just sort of puts me closer to home just a little bit. Now, for those that are wondering, hey, is Prosper just bringing in his homeboys from Africa onto the show? Now, let me tell you something, man. Lee isn't just any mindset coach. This is a man who's actually trained at what I think is the Harvard of professional speaking schools, and that's the Bill Gove Speech Workshop. And he actually stands among giants like Bob Proctor, who was his personal mentor, and he has walked in the same corridors as luminaries like Zig Ziglar. Now, he's also walked a rocky path of fear, self-doubt, and even a life-threatening carjacking, where he emerged stronger and armed with a message of calmness, resilience, and untapped potential. And if you are on his really good books, Lee is known to give life-changing gifts, and he's going to be telling us about the gift that he gave his beloved mother at some point in the show today. So today we're going to be diving deep into Lee's journey, his setbacks, transformations, and triumphs, and what they mean to each and every one of us, because we are all on a journey, and we do come across certain things that might stop us dead in our tracks. It's how we respond to situations like that actually makes the biggest difference. And so we're going to be uncovering the invisible insights that he's also gained along the way, and why his message could be the key to awakening your own hidden potential. So I want you to get comfortable, lean in, grab that drink, maybe a kombucha, a whiskey, or coffee, or whatever it is, and be prepared for a conversation that might actually shift your perspective on what's possible. Now, Lee, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified about. We introduced you as somebody who started his life in corporate IT, which obviously, it then led you to start seeking a deeper purpose. Let us know a little bit about what life was like during that time.
So, Prosper, I was actually very fortunate. I enjoyed the early part of my IT career. I was in that career for 18 years, and I was a enterprise network administrator. So we built large enterprise networks, and I managed Microsoft back-end software like Microsoft Exchange and Active Directory. And I mean, that's very technical stuff, but I spent 18 years, but at some point towards the tail end of that career, I felt this disconnect from what I was doing, or basically I was searching for a deeper meaning to life. I felt unfulfilled by it. So it provided well financially, things were moving along, and I was really good at it. but I had this unfulfilled sense within me. And, maybe many of your listeners can relate to that. Are you at the place in your life right now where you're feeling unfulfilled in your career, or you want to search for meaning and purpose, and you feel there's something higher that you're meant to be doing, or something different that you're meant to be doing? That's exactly where I was. And I picked up a book that you are probably very familiar with, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yep.
And I studied that book in, I think it was February, March 2013. I picked that book up, and I started studying it. And, I done a couple of things that Napoleon Hill, that author, told us to do. Write your goals down on a card. And I actually had 4 A4 cards. And I'll never forget one of the things that I had actually written on those, on the very first card, because I had 4 of them, was, Dad, whatever your religious persuasion is, the universe, however you refer to this higher power, I say, Dad, please take control of my mind and my heart and show me what's meant for me, or what you want me to do. And I'm not many things, but I'm definitely disciplined. And I'd go every afternoon. So I was still in this IT role. I'd go every afternoon into the boardroom when everyone would leave at 5 o'clock, Prosper, and I'd auto-suggest, I'd affirm those statements. And a couple of months out, when I went over those particular lines, Dad, please take control of my mind and my heart and show me what I'm meant to be doing, the tears started rolling. And I realized at that moment that it connected with my emotional mind, with my subconscious. And a couple of months out from there, an old friend who I had not seen for a number of years messaged me on Facebook just out of the blue. And he said to me, Lee, I had a dream last night that you were hosting a conference and you were the main speaker. Does this make any sense to you? Now, it wouldn't have made sense to a lot of people, but I'd been praying for that guidance. I'd been praying. And by that time, I had developed a voracious appetite for, the kind of material you've got behind you, all of the personal development books, videos, audio. I was consuming, and his dream to me was just like, okay, go and teach this.
Wow. Wow. And you know what they say, when the student is ready, the teacher would definitely appear. And I'm supposing this is exactly what happened to you at this particular moment. The pot was brewing, and the only thing that was now left to connect the dots was just that long lost friend who just came in from seemingly nowhere. Could that have been Dad talking to you?
I think so, definitely. It's really been an interesting journey, and that's what led me on to, in 2014, to going on a Dale Carnegie course for effective communication, becoming a Toastmaster, and then in July of that year, uh, attending the so-called Harvard, like you said, like you alluded to, the so-called Harvard of Professional Speaking Schools in Boston in July 2014, and that was the start of the journey. That was really the start. And when I decided I was going to do this, I decided I was going to get the very best training. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
yeah,
see, when things like this are happening, Lee, and thank you so much for sharing this sort of, start of how, you came about. Even though you were doing enterprise networking, connecting computers at a large scale, you were walking past the thing that really needed to be connected the most. You were not connected at all to your purpose, to Dad, to the very thing that would have made you be the person that you are today. But is that something that only Lee would come across, or is that something that's given to each and every one of us? Because I viscerally believe a lot of people are not connected.
my idea around that, Prosper, is each and every one of us have been sent into a far and distant land, and we've been equipped with specific talents, abilities, gifts to achieve something very specific. and everyone has a purpose and calling. That's my feeling around that. You called to do something. I'm called to do something. Your listeners, anybody listening to this now, you called to do something. And how do you know when you're moving in your purpose and your calling? It lights you up. I'm telling you, it's like nothing you've ever experienced in your life, where a lot of people are involved. In fact, the stats, I think there was a survey done by a very reputable organization, Prosper. They found that 80% of people are going to jobs, traveling an hour in traffic one way in the morning, an hour in traffic the other way in the evenings, and they're going to jobs that they dislike. 80% of people. I mean, that's a scary statistic. People, it's almost like people are on a hamster wheel. Um, you know, doing things that they don't enjoy doing, work that they don't enjoy doing, to buy things to impress people that they don't necessarily like, and that might not be a good idea. But I mean, it's somewhat true, right? So I think we all called to do something bigger. We all called to serve in a very specific way, and we've all got to go on that search for meaning. But I promise you, if you start asking the questions and you start tapping into spirit, this infinite intelligence, you'll be guided to it, you know.
Mm. And thank you so much for that, because some people would just be like, I'm not as, intelligent as an IT consultant or an IT, professional. And speaking of IT, a lot of IT people would definitely be left brain. And what you're talking about is very right brain, because with an IT person, you call the IT department, the first thing they ask you is, did you switch it on? Did you switch it off? And you would have probably been operating from that sort of standpoint. Yeah, I'm not connected, so did I switch it on, did I switch it off? And do you know what I mean? Or garbage in, garbage out, or what are the words that IT people use? If this then that, and you tell us how you made that sort of crossover, because that's not an easy cross from somebody who's very technically minded to now start thinking esoteric.
So, Prosper, obviously your knowledge is deep, man. That's such a good question, and you position that so well. When my mentor, Bob Proctor, met me, he looked at me, he was very intuitive. Like, I've never come across a man that was so intuitive. It felt like he could read your mind. Have you encountered people like that?
Ooh, yeah, you get goosebumps, and you
Yeah.
feel seen maybe for the very first time. Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, I just met him. I met him up in the hallway in the hotel the first day, the first 6 day training I attended with him. And he looked at me and he said, Leo, about 85% left brain. And I mean, if you consider my career choice and where I found myself at that point, he was spot on. I was very left brain dominated. But as you know, this business that we in, coaching, speaking, mentoring people, helping people, it's a very right brain thing, right? So it's very intuitive, it's emotional. Coaching or speaking, that's a transfer of emotion. So how I started developing, once I understood it, I done a brain profiling. Once I understood where I was mapped out in terms of L2, and that was my strong brain quadrant, I I got a book by a lady, and I want to get this author's name right. Dr. Lucia, Lucia, Dr. Lucia Cappuccioni. I think she's an Italian lady.
We Italian,
But
yeah.
she wrote a book. Are you familiar with the name?
No, no, but the Lucia connotation, I did mention to you, my wife is Italian, right?
Italian, yeah. So she's she's written a book called The Power in Your Other Hand, and where you start drawing and writing with your left hand, your non-dominant, or let me rather say your non-dominant hand. In my case, it was my left hand. And as we know, your left part of your body is controlled by the right hemisphere. So I take my incantations, my auto suggestions every day. I had 12 of them for many years, and I'd write them every morning with my left hand. And in the beginning, it was all over the place, right, Prosper? But I got it to a point where, and I've got that book somewhere here, where it was legible, it was between the lines, it was really clear, but that's because I stuck with it. Like I say, not many things, but definitely disciplined. Um, the meditation, really focusing on mindfulness meditation. I even took my mouse and I started using it on the left hand side. I was just doing these things, and as you also coach and you learn to connect with people, you get better at it. So it was a process to become strong in the right hemisphere. A lot of people think that you're just wired that way, and that's the way it is. In fact, I've got a friend, she's an attorney here in South Africa, very good attorney, Martel Vos. And she's very right. When she started her firm, she was very right brain, very creative. She still is. And when she done her initial brain profiling, she was right brain dominated. I think she was R1, so the front quadrant on the right side. And when she done another brain profiling now in 2022, because legal, they're very left brain, it's very left brain dominated. She's actually, her work has strengthened the left hemisphere of her brain. In terms of, do you believe, or do you think that people can strengthen the non-dominant sides of their, right versus left? Do you think people can strengthen the non-dominant side?
Oh,
Your idea around?
I think so, because the brain, when utilized like a muscle, you could walk into the gym very skinny, but after about 3 months you can now start lifting a lot more things that you're doing. So what you're talking about, while you're speaking, I literally wrote a sentence with my left hand, and I was actually able to leave it in the line, and everything else was working. So I haven't tried it, I haven't done it in a while, but for the rest of the show I am going to be taking notes with my left hand, because then that's a whole different thing altogether. But yeah, no, I mean, with a bit of practice, with a bit of application of that brain, you can make that switch, and it's just a beautiful place to be, isn't it?
Um, a lot of people, and that's why personal development is so important in personal growth. A lot
Mm.
of people just accept their lot. They figure, this is just the way I am. This is just the way it is. And they just keep getting the same results over and over. But you can change your story. Like anyone listening to this, you can change the story. It's within your power. Um, I suppose all we really need, right, Prosper, is the right guidance, and the right sort of, to get in front of the right sort of material, and we can change our story. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it was Einstein who mentioned that, you keep doing the same thing, expecting a whole different result. That obviously is the definition of insanity. And talking about putting in different inputs, you spoke about a mouse. One of the things I learned about a computer is a mouse is an input device. So
Mhm.
whatever you started inputting into yourself, the learnings, all the activities that you started doing, it led you into a whole different path. Because obviously, as a IT consultant, I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect. People that go in there are very introverted. They just, want to just do their job, go in there. But now you have this opportunity to speak in front of crowds and jumped into the world of coaching. I can only imagine you probably had not sold anything to anyone for a very long time in your 18 years. And coaching is all about, first of all, selling yourself onto who you are, selling the person that you're talking to, and then just really selling ideas and things of that nature. Just walk us through what that world looked like for you.
Prosper, so on the money, man. So at the Bulgo speech workshop, so this Harvard of Professional Speaking Schools, the man who conducted it, Steve Siebold, at the end of the 3-day weekend, because it was a one year program, but it was a 3-day workshop weekend in Boston. And at the end of the weekend, he said to us, he said, we've now equipped you with the professional keynoting skills. But he said, Bill Gove was the father of professional speaking in America. Bill Gove used to say that no lives are changed in 40 minutes. And that's why people are so um, discouraged by motivational rallies, motivational speakers, or skeptical. Let's not say discouraged, skeptical, because they go to those events and they feel good, they feel jazzed, they leave there, and a couple of days later, the paradigm comes back in. And Steve said to us, he said, if you really want to change lives, find a proven speaker with a proven track record and license their content. So a proven speaker with a proven track record, with content that works, that's proven, trial and tested, and license their content. And that led me on a year and a half research mission. I studied guys like Earl Nightingale, you're probably familiar with. I studied Steve Siebold's mental toughness content. He's in the top 1% of speakers. I then studied Bob's stuff. And in December 2016, I licensed Bob's Thinking into Results content. And your question was around, selling. So yeah, I had the professional keynoting skills. I had this content that was proven in corporate America. In fact, all over the world, I mean, wherever you go, Bob has got a great reputation for helping people get results. And I had this, and then I realized, gosh, but I don't know how to sell this. So, I mean, imagine having the professional keynoting skills from the platform, having this content, but realizing, gosh, I don't know how to sell. And that's when I really got into the psychology of selling and understanding that, because like you say, IT is a very left brain dominated industry. It's very, and selling is an emotional transaction. And, it literally felt like I was walking in the dark, man. But, through developing that right hemisphere, through developing effective questions, putting in the work, getting some mentorship around selling, developing a sales process, studying. Every day I still study sales cycle. I still study on selling, because I've actually learned to understand that selling is the greatest profession in the world. Like, a lot of people have this sort of uncomfortable attitude or beliefs around selling, right, Prosper? But selling is the most honorable profession when it's done right, right? Think of it. Selling essentially is finding out what someone else wants, mixing it with what you have, and then handing it back to them all baked, cooked, and ready to serve. Selling is essentially serving, and it's been said that the greatest amongst these shall be the servant. So for me, I think selling is the greatest profession. And, as someone like me who's naturally, or at the start, predominantly left brain, if I could develop the ability to do it, and I haven't mastered it, I'm getting better. It's always you're reaching for it. You never quite got it. We're always reaching for it. But if I could get somewhat good at it, I know anybody can, with application, and if they're really, genuine or sincere about their want or their desire for it, and they're really willing to pay the price and do. Anybody can develop the ability to sell. Anybody can develop their right hemisphere if they come from that sort of side.
Absolutely. Now, I'm just going to speak from me also being an African brother, and you had a good job, Lee. You know what I mean? Your family, everybody else would have celebrated. He's an IT consultant. Now we don't have to worry about him. And you went on to undo that and start a new career and everything else. What was the first of all, the reception of the people? Did they actually understand what it is that you were going to be teaching them? Because all these things were coming from overseas, I can imagine you trying to tell your fellow brothers and say, hey, you too can do and have a happier existence, and somebody's looking at their rand, or looking at their wallet and say, come on, man, where are you coming from? Things of that nature.
Look, I think it's something that a lot of people struggle to understand, because many of us have been programmed with the idea: go to school, get a degree, get a good education, find get a corporate career, work for 40 years or 30 years, 35 years, and retire with enough to look after yourself for the rest of your days. That's what we programmed with. So to step away from something that is established and to move into an unknown area, something, like I say, that you've never done before. Look, gotten some of the best training, but to move into an area you've never been before, that is risky. Like that is so super risky. And you're right, Prosper. People in my family were questioning, they were saying, after a year or two, like, aren't you, sorry you left your IT career. And no, man, look, the option is, imagine getting to the end of your life and having achieved 1,000 different things, but having returned to your maker, not having achieved that one thing that you were supposed to achieve while you were here. And for me, right now, regardless of the risk, the most scariest thing, and we're going on a number of years now because I've been in this business full time for a number of years now. But the scariest thing is having returned at the end of this journey, not having fulfilled my purpose. And for those listening to us, you don't want to get to the end of your life and having this hollow feeling. I mean, why? Here's a question to you, Prosper. Why are so many people, as they age, as they get older, they're so jaded and they feel so down, and they're always bouncing each other off the walls, and they just, I mean, I suppose there is a hormonal component to it, but I think people are just unhappy because they realize that they didn't live out their potential, or there's something inside of them that's telling them you didn't do what you were meant to do. And that for me is, having stayed in IT, feeling unfulfilled, being handsomely rewarded in terms of remuneration, and continuing on for another 20 years or 30 years. That for me is a scary thought. Like and you can probably, I'm sure you can relate to this. Nothing energizes me more than helping people, than sitting with somebody and seeing the lights go off, seeing bang, 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 okay, and getting a message, or, I mean, even though you don't necessarily live on it, but getting a message a month or a week or two later saying, that conversation changed the whole game for me, changed everything. Thank you so much. It's in this business, right, Prosper, there's two forms of income. There's a material income, which you earn from, the keynote speech or the coaching someone. And then there's the psychic income. And the psychic income, that's the emotional income. And I actually think that's where the real action in this game is that psychic income, that emotional hit that you get from helping others. It's I don't know. If I get onto a chat like this with you, or I do a webinar after this, or I go to a BNI meeting tomorrow where I'm helping some people. At the end of the day, I'm so energized from my work that it's hard for me to switch off. I love it so much. It's like I find myself still going at 10, 11 at night. A lot of people, they get to the end of the day at 5 o'clock, and they feel so deflated and so depleted. And, I want to ask you, if you're listening to this, I want to ask you, does your work energize you, or does it deplete you? Does it take away from you? And that's a very good question to ask yourself, because that's a clear sign or a clear indication that you're either on the right path or you're not. And, if you find yourself in that 80%, look, at least you're aware, and maybe lean into it, try and understand. Because I think once we're aware, that then we can start making changes and start asking the right questions, getting the right guidance to move out of it. I think it's really sad that most people spend most of their lives doing work that's unfulfilling. What do you think about that, Prosper?
I think that's a gift that you've just given people there, because look at this. I don't know about you, Lee, but I'm working right now. And, just to think that I get to do this every single day. First of all, speak to remarkable people like yourself. And in the process, we're creating for and relating to people so that they too can have a happier existence. I can't place this, and you were talking about how so many people get to the end of their life, with nothing to show for it. And usually, I think it was Les Brown that mentioned that the richest place in the world is the graveyard, where people die with songs inside of them, videos like this inside of them, books inside of them that they never had an opportunity to give to the world. And that's the reason why so many people end up maybe wanting to come back, but not in the form that they left as. And some people call that haunting or whatever it is. It's just because this person just really wants to give something, even a flower, to a little girl and things of that nature. And one thing that you touched upon, Lee, which is, there is material income or material wealth which comes along with this, but there's the intellectual, there's the fulfillment that we come here to serve and things of that nature, and nobody can take that away from you. You see, with material wealth, you could start driving fancy cars, you could have money in your pocket, and somebody would want to rob you off of that. And speaking of which, you have an extraordinary story of somebody who wanted to take material wealth off of you in 2019. First of all, you maybe walk us through that story, and how that incident then really, really impacted you. And yeah.
So I was carjacked. So I was hijacked here in South Africa. I mean, as you know, as a fellow African brother, in South Africa, crime is pretty prevalent here, right? So I was carjacked. I was hijacked on the 13th of January, 2019. And it happened on a Sunday afternoon, Prosper, at about 2:15 at a shopping mall close to where I stay. So this particular shopping mall on the Sunday afternoon, all of the stores were closed. And I pulled into the parking lot. Parking lot was empty. I pulled into the parking lot and I hopped out of the car, and there was a furniture store, and I was looking through the windows at dining tables. I was window shopping. Well, anyway, the next minute, this gray Volkswagen Golf pulls into the parking lot with blue lights on the dashboard. So initially, I thought it was an unmarked police vehicle, but instantly my intuition, my gut said, hey, something's not right here. So anyway, these guys pull into the parking lot. They roll down the passenger side window, and the driver says to me out of the window, he says, we just got a call that someone's trying to break into one of the stores here. And the next minute, the passenger in front and the passenger behind the driver both jump out with firearms in their hands. One coming to me from the left front and the other from the right-hand side, Prosper. So anyway, the guy from the left front comes up to me and he starts tapping my pockets and he says, where's your car keys? And I show him, it's in my right pocket here. So anyway, this guy takes the key out of my pocket, and these two gentlemen proceed to bundle me into the boot, the trunk of the car that I was driving that Sunday afternoon. Now, I was driving a little Volkswagen Polo, and I'm 6.5 feet tall. I was born on a long weekend. And these guys literally bundled me into the boot of that car. Now, to be honest with you, the first 10 minutes was tough, like just to calm myself or make sense of what was happening, like just to make sense. But what happened was 10 minutes later, they transferred me from the boot of my car into the boot of their car, and at least there was a bit more leg room in there. Now, over and above the speaking credentials, that you've mentioned, if someone were to ask me what I do, I'd say I'm a mindset coach. I'm a mindset mentor for leaders. And obviously, as you know, Prosper, we've got to be a product of the product, right? You cannot give what you do not have. So I've been internalizing ideas around mindset for many years by the time this happened. And laying in that boot, it was almost like my subconscious mind gifted me ideas that were really helpful. And if you're listening to this, I want you to really tune into these next three ideas, because it could really help you along in terms of where you are. So lying in that boot, the first thing that came to mind was I run a 6-month coaching program called Thinking into Results, as I've mentioned earlier. And in this Thinking into Results program, lesson 9 in there is a lesson on attitude. And I'm lying in this boot, and in the video of that lesson, my mentor Bob, he speaks about a man by the name of Viktor Frankl. So I'm lying in this boot, and Bob's voice literally plays in my head. Are you familiar with Viktor Frankl's story, Prosper?
As a man thinketh. Yeah.
No, not As a Man Thinketh. That's James Allen. Viktor Frankl.
Men's search for meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning. There we go. Yes, correct. So Viktor Frankl authored a little book, brilliant book. And if you don't have that in your library, you want to get it, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. But Bob said in that video, Viktor Frankl said that in the worst circumstance, we can search for meaning, or we can try and find meaning to life. Now, Prosper, we all know what happened in those concentration camps, right?
Yep.
I mean, this man spent years in Auschwitz. He's seen his entire family murdered there. He's seen his wife murdered there. He referred to his wedding band as the last vestige of his known identity. And he realized in that moment, once they took the wedding band from him, he realized in that moment that they could take everything away from him except what he called the last of human freedoms, which is your and my ability to think. And he said, regardless of the intellectual and the physical abuse that they subjected him to in that concentration camp, he said he could still choose to hold a positive picture on the screen of his mind. Now, I'm lying in this boot. This plays in my mind, and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, Lee, this is a tough spot that you find yourself in. But relative to what that man went through, this is probably a walk in the park. If he could choose to hold a positive picture on the screen of his mind, surely you can try. So that was the first thing that came to mind lying in that book that was really handy. The second thing, Prosper, that came to mind lying there, and if you're listening to this and you're taking some notes, you might want to write these next 3 steps down. So the second thing that came to mind is there's a speaker from the west coast of America, from California, by the name of Michael Bernard Beckwith. Are you familiar with Beckwith?
I will look him up in a minute. Yeah, but yeah, Michael Bernard. Yeah.
Michael Bernard Beckwith. And Beckwith has a 3-step approach for anything negative or anything challenging that you might be going through. So here's the 3 steps. I'm laying in the boot, this plays in my mind. Step number 1, it is what it is, accept it. It's either going to control you or you going to control it, at least from a mental perspective. Now, to be honest with you, Prosper, very early on in that experience, I gave it over to the universe. I said, hey, look, Dad, whether I make it out of this alive or dead, I accept the outcome because you're in control. I mean, 4-armed guys, what was I really going to do? The second step in Beckwith's approach is harvest the good. There's good in everything. If you're looking for it, you're going to find it. Now, some of your listeners out there might be sitting and wondering, gosh, Lee, what was the good in that? Because I was looking for it, I found it. My 4-year-old son, Zach, well, he's 10 now, he was 4 at the time. My 4-year-old son, Zach, was with me that weekend, and he could so easily have been with me at 2:15 on that Sunday afternoon. Thank goodness he was at home. He was with my mom. He was safe. So that was something immediately I could celebrate. My sister was supposed to come out with me to look at these dining tables. Prosper. Thank goodness she didn't make it. She was at home. She was safe too. And that was something, both of those, when I thought about it, was something I could celebrate. And the third step in Beckwith's approach is forgive all the rest. Forgive means to let go of, completely abandon. Someone's said something hurtful about you, towards you, whatever it is. Maybe a business partnership that didn't end well, a divorce, a relationship, you carrying some emotional baggage, some negative energy towards it. Just let it go. You know, all of the great religions, right, Prosper, they all talk about this thing called forgiveness. But we know that forgiveness is not to let the other person off the hook. Forgiveness is to free ourselves. Because these three steps played in my mind, lying in that boot, I could start praying for these guys. I prayed for their parents. I prayed for their kids, even though there was a possibility they were going to take me away from my boy. I prayed that they'd find a way to make it out of that sort of lifestyle to make a meaningful difference in the world. Now, I'm not sharing that story with you to impress you or your listeners, but rather to impress upon you that regardless of what's happening in your outside world, you can still control what's happening on the inside. And why do you want to do that? All of the great leaders of the past, they've disagreed on virtually everything, but they've all agreed that we become what we think about. Now, if you becoming what you think about, why on earth would you allow outside conditions, circumstances, and people to dictate what's happening on the inside? Looking at the bank balance, controlling your thinking, the X-ray syndrome, controlling the report card, sales sheet, all controlling the thinking. But that is just evidence of past thinking, past results. People are looking at that. It's controlling their thinking, their feeling, their action, and they wonder why they keep getting the same results over and over. Now, I'm not saying let's be disconnected from current reality or from your present results. We want to be aware of it, but it must not control our thinking. They let me go, Prosper, 3 hours later behind one of the big hospitals here in Johannesburg, in a township called Soweto. Some of your listeners are probably familiar with. It was actually the township where Nelson Mandela lived. And there's a big hospital there called Baragwanath, and they let me go behind that hospital at about 5:15. And when they let me go, I phoned a family member, Keenan, to fetch me. And when he got there, Prosper, he looked at me and I cannot believe how calm you are. And there's one other thing that I want to share with your listeners, and this is probably the reason I was as calm as Keenan seemed. I was part of a group of about 25 mindset coaches and speakers from all around the world. And we were doing what is called a 90-day serenity challenge, where we were rewriting the serenity chapter from that book, As a Man Thinketh, by James Allen. It's just a short 1.5-page chapter. And the challenge went this way. If you'd get to day 18 and you'd miss a day, you'd start back at day 1 again, right? And the goal is obviously to get to 90 days. Now, I started with this group on what is the date? I think it was the 24th of October 2018. So by the 13th of January 2019, when this carjacking incident happened, I'd been internalizing ideas from that chapter on serenity, this calmness, this equanimity, this self-control, this inner strength, inner resolve. I've been impressing those ideas for 79 days on my subconscious mind. And that's probably the reason I was as calm as Keenan seemed. Now, I want you to think about this. Those 3 ideas that I've just shared with you had me mentally spiraling up in the boot of that car. Now, imagine if I never had those 3 tools, I'd have been mentally spiraling down, and I've jumped out at the back of that hospital at absolute emotional wreck. Does mindset coaching work? There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that proper elite level mindset coaching that goes to the subconscious paradigm definitely does work. It's no rah-rah motivation. Hey, we get you up today and you're down tomorrow again. Proper elite level mindset coaching that goes to the subconscious programming works. Now, why am I sharing the story with you, Prosper, and with your listeners? Because I think right now, all around the world, I don't know if you agree with me, but we seem to be living in crazy times. I mean, before we came on here, you spoke about the loneliness in
Yeah,
certain parts.
it is actually an epidemic, the loneliness epidemic.
I mean, we've just come through a pandemic now. None of us have experienced anything like that in our lifetime. I mean, even
No.
if you look at the political landscape in the US, what's happening in Gaza, Ukraine, here in South Africa, we've got our fair share, as you aware of, we've got our fair share of socioeconomic ills, crime, corruption, a lack of service delivery, power issues. I mean, we are living in challenging times, but just like Viktor Frankl, you and I and your listeners can still choose to hold a positive picture on the screen of their mind.
Wow. Wow.
Now, to bring the story in for Land in Prosper, after having attended the Bulgo speech workshop, gone through that training, licensing uh, Bob's content, I set a goal to speak on an international stage. That was the goal. And nothing qualified me for it. Remember, I had some good training, but I was still in an IT corporate career. I set a goal to speak on an international stage, and then the voices come, and I don't know if you can relate to this. Who are you to speak on an international stage? Who's going to listen to you? You're just a nobody from the wrong side of the main road. Remember where you come from, Prosper. You know, all these voices, right? But I stuck with it. It was what I really wanted. And I followed my mentor, Bob Proctor's instruction. And this very worst thing that could have happened to me, this carjacking, turned out to be the very best thing because it presented me with an opportunity to share this story at Bob Proctor's Matrix seminar at the Hilton in Toronto in March 2019, and literally the realization of a goal that I'd set a number of years prior. You know, Napoleon Hill, he said in his bestseller, Think and Grow Rich, he said, any adversity, any challenge or setback brings with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. People are so locked into how they've been wrong, what they've lost. You know, they're so caught up in that. If you're going through something particularly challenging, maybe it's a loss, maybe you've got a story of struggle, and you keep going to that dark place because of your challenges. If you're going through something tough or have been through something tough, maybe you want to thank your lucky stars for it. And I'll tell you why. There's a very basic law of the universe, Prosper, called the law of polarity. And that law states for every up, you've got to have a down. It's also called the law of opposites, right? Up, down, left, right. Like if it's 5 meters from the wall on your right to the wall on your left, it's 5 meters back. Hot, cold, there'd be no inside to your room, right? If there wasn't an outside. And if you're going through something that's really challenging, when you are mentally able to extricate yourself and work your way to the other side, the win is equal and opposite. If it's just a small challenge, it's a small win, right? So if your listeners have experienced something really challenging, a story of struggle, I promise you there's something in there for you if you are mentally able to work your way to the other side. And that's based on an exact law.
Absolutely. And congratulations. I think you would have seen me having an emotional reaction to that because, first of all, carjacking, man, like that's like four guys all armed, and there was no way anybody would have been so calm and thinking, hey, I'll be fine. Everything is gonna be a-okay for me. And for that alone, I commend you. I don't know, movies are gonna be written, books or whatever it is. Just prepare for that because those stages that you were talking about, I think they're gonna be bigger and brighter, and you're gonna really change a lot of people's lives. But I mean, that's something that obviously you are aware is gonna happen. But I visually believe that life happens for us, even though we think it's happening to us. Because in as much as I would want to say anything else, yes, you are an IT guy. Yes, you received a message. Once in a while, we receive unsolicited messages in Facebook, and yeah, it might just turn out to be something else. But I think this story really solidified your journey because to whom much is given, much is required. You literally had to be that person who you were now going to be standing in front of a podium, being able to reflect back and say, you know what, I did this, and so can you. And I that is a
Now,
gift, all in all.
anyone listening to us right now, right, Prosper, imagine how developing that sort of mental toughness will
Mm,
help you in your areas of health. I mean, those health challenges, struggles come, relationships, business, career. With that sort of mental toughness, think how much better you can navigate. Because the thing is, like in that situation, the carjacking, because I was calm, I calmed those guys. And it's probably why it turned out so well. You know, uh, rationality goes down the tubes the minute our thinking becomes clouded, we become anxious. So if you're able to maintain mental toughness and you have from a mental, because it all starts in the mind, everything's behavior, confidence, how you walk and talk, everything, how effective you are at selling, your career, your relationship with your wife prosper, how you raise your kids, how you manage your staff, man. Everything is an expression of the mind. We've got to understand how to take control of this immense power. And a lot of people don't study into the mind like you do. A lot of people don't understand how the mind works.
absolutely.
Don't you
And you
think?
did introduce us to that connection. You know what I mean? There's that connection that needs to happen. Had you not had that connection, I mean, I can only imagine you were lying in fetal position, right? Obviously in the boot of the car there. And that's how a lot of people live their lives, in fetal position, just afraid that something is going to break, or whatever material stuff they have, somebody's going to want to take it away from them. But Lee, I mean, obviously, yes, I know you had all this training, and after 79 days, you were given the greatest gift, which now becomes the platform which you are standing on. Any normal person would have stayed in that fetal position, man, and just said, woe is me, I've gone through my things. What now brings you back and really wanting to help other people be, do, and have? I mean, anyone else would have just been like, this has happened now. I've had my own fair share, and then just leave it to themselves like that.
I think there's a part of me that's just persistent and I'll never quit. But also, like you said, right? Things are not happening to you, they're happening for you. So, how can you use the story of struggle? How can you use this terrible incident in a way that empowers and helps people? Because if there's a story of struggle, there's a story of victory if you are mentally wired to see your way through it or work your way through it. And yeah, I suppose the mentorship that I've gotten and the sort of study that you and I get into, I'm I'm always looking for the silver lining, man. And I think, all of us should always be looking for the silver lining there.
Mm,
It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. It's you know, for those who are of the Christian persuasion, all things work together for those who love the man above. It's
absolutely, absolutely. Now you've got a program. I think it's called Thinking into Results, and it actually sounds very life changing. First of all, what can people take away from this program, and how can our listeners start applying to it or join the next intake?
so the program was actually formulated, the philosophy and the content was formulated by my mentor, Bob Proctor. Bob passed in February 2022, but for the last 5, 6 years of his life, I was mentored by him. And I've, just like you, Prosper, I've been studying personal development material since 2013, 2012, so for a long time. But I've never come across something so well put together. And this is what I take my clients through. This is the content that I share with them and the lessons that or the tools that I help put into their toolbox. It helps people regain their health, attain business goals, specific income goals, relationships. So any goal that you want, something that you want to achieve in your life, maybe you've been struggling to achieve it. And you need help in that regard. This program, Thinking into Results, like I said, is the most powerful thing I've ever encountered in terms of taking your goal, taking your desire, install it into your subconscious mind where it harmonizes with universal law. The program also helps us realign our habits, install a new self-image, get comfortable with fear, attitude. There's so many powerful lessons in the program. Bob teaches on the number one key to success, or I teach on the number one key to success. But obviously, I've been mentored by him, and yeah, it's just it can help your listeners in any area in terms of goal achieving.
Fantastic. Now, Lee, indulge me here a little bit.
Sure.
Based on, I mean, your life story and your experience and everything else, and we had not really come across, I mean, obviously, being of African descent, there would be some sort of, struggles that you'd have gone through and everything else. But this carjacking sort of presents for you somewhat of a pattern break. And obviously, for those that are not well versed with a pattern break, it's something that really shakes you to your core and literally gets you to look up and start, doing things in a whole different way. And this is, I mean, I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect, that obviously this carjacking presented that sort of that pattern break. And with that in mind, it is somewhat akin to a rite of passage. I mean, obviously, you were waking up, connecting your computers, switching them on and off, putting the mouse to the left or right. Those were rituals. Those were the things that were just making it happen. But the rite of passage now separated the boy from the man. You know what I mean? And you would understand, maybe it doesn't really happen, but in sort of different cultures and in some of our culture in Zim, when a boy gets to the age of, say, 16 and 13 for girls, you're proverbially called into, by the village elders, and then they tap you on the shoulder and then they say, it's your turn to lead. And obviously, depending on the culture or whatever it is, you start learning a few things that would then make you become a leader in your own realm. And what that scenario and ceremony presents now is a rite of passage where you're no longer a kid, you're now an adult. Now, in the first world, or in the world we live in, you were talking about having a seamless career. Obviously, being an IT person, you'd have gone to kinder, high school, gotten into a relationship, gotten into university, got that career, and now you're looking for fulfillment. And that's how everybody lives. Now, would you then say, and without, taking away from the mentorship that you've gotten and what Bob Proctor has given you, what you're sort of taking people through is akin to a rite of passage where you're taking them in and saying, look at your health, look at your mindset, look at this, and you're not a baby anymore. Become an adult. I don't know what you comment about that.
Look, definitely. I mean, it's all about controlling the mind, right? I mean, this is an extreme example, right? And it's an impactful story in that it's real. Like, once you go through something like that and you realize, but in that moment, these guys could control me, they could take everything away from me except this last of human freedoms. And it was the one thing that I was going to hold on to with everything. Like, I was not going to go out in a way where I was thinking ill towards them or bad. I was not going to go out in that negative state. Now, the thing is, people fold. They have a bad month in business. They have a challenge in a relationship. They have something go wrong, and then they fold quickly, or they go to that. And I don't know if you agree with me, but don't you think, like, depression and anxiety, that's a pandemic around the world, right? And that all starts in the mind. It's what people are putting in their mind. So yes, rite of passage, my experience was a tangible, real, tough experience. But that experience has given me now the authority to speak to somebody and say, you know what? If I could handle that and control my thinking, what you're going through now. And I understand what you're going through is tough, but you can still control your thinking and mentally work your way out of it. Don't let it control you. You control it from a mental perspective.
Absolutely. Now, Lee, I mean, a couple of people that I know that are probably watching this have probably broken a nail, lost an eyelash, maybe chipped a tooth, and that's the hardest they've ever had to experience. For the uninitiated, what would be the best place to go to so they can, maybe get this, teaching, the thinking into results, or just learn from what it is that you're doing online?
So I'd suggest if you'd like help with regards to mindset, I'd love to have a conversation with you, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. So my name is Lee L-E-E, and the surname is Roebeck, Roebeck. And connect with me on LinkedIn. Drop me a message. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to have a conversation and share some resources to help you develop that sort of mental toughness.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below, and people can definitely get in touch with you there. And one thing we never touched upon is gratitude, man. I mean, obviously you would be grateful that you survived that particular incident unscathed, and now you've got a good story to tell. I mean, not only on the Online Prosperity Show, but now it's now a global message that you're sharing there with people. But you expressed so much gratitude, not only for that particular part that Zach was not with you on that particular day, that your sister didn't make it to come and watch those, at that furniture store. And you did something else for somebody who you haven't mentioned at all in this particular show, your mom.
Yes, yes. So that's a story or an experience that really warms my heart. In April 2015, Prosper, I pick up the phone. I phone my mother at work. She's retired now. She was still working back then. And I say to her, "Hello, moms." I say, how are you doing? And she says, "No, I'm fine. How are you?" And I say, "I'm good. I'm good." And I said to her, "Mommy, I've been thinking about it, and I'd like to do something really special for you this year for Mother's Day. Something to show you how much I appreciate you." And she said, "Like what?" And then I said slowly, "Mommy, I'd like you to allow me to pay your house off, to pay a mortgage off." And I heard her on the other end of the phone, and it was about a 10-second break, Prosper. She came back and she said, are you sure?" And I said, of all things, she says, "Are you sure?" And I said to her, "Yes, mommy, I'm sure. Send me your account details and I'll try and settle it later today." Now, I'd imagine during that 10-second or so break, she must have been thinking to herself, Prosper, there's no way this can be true. After everything this guy put me through as a little boy, I must be daydreaming, or this must be a practical joke. I gave my mother so much trouble when I was at school, Prosper, that she used to attend the parents-teachers meeting under an assumed name. Or at least she should have, man. But anyway, a bit later that day, my mom's colleague, Raylene, emails me and she says, "Wow, Lee, I think this is one of the most amazing things that I've heard in a long, long time." And I replied to Raylene and I said to her, "Raylene, if you were to know what I've put my mom through, I think you just consider this to be a deposit or a down payment."
Down payment.
But yeah, that's something that I will always remember for as long as I live. There's
Absolutely. And
nothing,
congratulations. It's
there's
like you said,
nothing, there's nothing more fulfilling than giving, man. Nothing more fulfilling than giving.
absolutely. And I think it was Zig Ziglar that mentioned, help enough people get what they want, then you too will get that which you want. Look at this now. You obviously can claim the rights to that particular story and the fulfillment that comes along with that. That is the internal wealth that you've been telling us about. But now you're introducing us to a new character. We got to close that loop. Now, knowing what you know now about life and who you've become, what would you say to that young Lee that gave mom a really hard time? And I think she ran out of names to sign up to the school. I mean, knowing what you know now about life. You
I'd have told him to get into personal development at an earlier age,
know,
not wait until he was 33, 32, to get into it at a much earlier age.
So many people waste a lot of chances, time, opportunities, and things of that nature, and it never really works out for them. Fantastic. No, Lee, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for anybody else that's going to embark on a journey on of either resilience or just really living, because what you went through, I wouldn't wish it upon any of my enemies, but what you came back with is literally what I want everybody else to experience. So it's just one of those things that not a lot of people would come unscathed. But now that we know where you've been, what happened to you, and everything else, what's next? What can people expect now that you've taken us into your world, Lee?
So what's next is scaling and doing things on a much bigger scale. And, I've done a couple of international speaking events. I've spoken at the B&I Global Convention in 2020. I've done a few international events, but what's next is getting out there on a bigger scale in terms of presenting all over the world and really scaling up and helping a lot more people, because the results that I've seen people get with the coaching that I take them through and the help, it's just been phenomenal. I'll give you maybe two quick stories. And this is all these video testimonials of this, I think, on LinkedIn. One lady I met, Prosper, from Tampa in the USA, a lady by the name of Marlita Black. And during that first conversation her and I had, I asked her, what's that goal or what's that dream in your heart, that's kind of been on ice for a while? And she said to me, I really want to write a book. I think I've got a book in me, and I asked her how long. She said, I've had that desire for about 4 or 5 years. 10 months after we started our journey together, her book, Say Something, was published. And I actually wrote the foreword to her book. But this lady was born to write. Some people are born to speak, right, Prosper? Some are born to coach. Some are born to sell. This lady was born to write. And a book was published on Amazon. It hit bestseller status in 7 different categories. She's actually written a second book now. She's started multiple businesses, and within a very short period of time. But she followed specific. She could follow instruction, and things really took off. There's another lady who was stuck in a corporate career similar to where I was when I started. She was working. Are you familiar with the De Beers Mining Group?
The diamonds, a girl's best friend.
Yes. So she worked for De Beers as a chartered accountant. She was a CA. So obviously well paid, also established. And she had discovered this network marketing business called Zenzino, a health and wellness business. And so the goal she wanted to achieve was she wanted to move out of a full-time employment into a 9 to 5 into this network marketing business full-time. And within 5 months of starting together, she had increased the income in her Zanzino business by 126%. So more than double the turnover in that business. And she was able to move full-time into it. So, she had replaced a 9 to 5 income. So, just stories like that. So, I really want to get this information into a lot more hands out there and scale in terms of my impact and helping people. Because I know what I've got works. I know it. There's no shadow of a doubt in my mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Lee, I can't thank you enough for such an enlightening conversation. I mean, what you went through and how you came out of it is just testament to itself of just the resilience, the overcoming self-doubt, and even just all those life-threatening things that no other person would have come out of unscathed. So yeah, I really appreciate the time that you spent with me today.
I enjoyed our chat. Thank you for having me, Prosper.
Fantastic. And to everybody else that's listening and watching today, if today's discussion with Lee resonated, don't just keep it to yourself. I encourage you to share this episode with a friend or colleague who's actually going through stuff and could use a little bit of inspiration. Maybe that could be your little thing that you would have done to make this world a better place. And I will be putting in all those links that Lee has so generously afforded us so that you can connect with him on LinkedIn and all the other places that you can, learn from him. And if you want more of these insights, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, just look to your left. There should be a video that's waiting for you to click it. My next guest is going to blow your mind off, and I'll keep giving you these stories and strategies to empower you on your own journey. Until next time, bye for now.